Yeah, I want you in
Turning
it.
up.
Hasta la próxima.
¡Alguien! ¡Ayúdeme! ¡Por favor! ¡Socorro! ¡Por favor! ¡Por aquí! No. Los faunos. No pudimos repelerlos. Se llevaron a los otros. A los túneles. Esta tierra solía estar a salvo. Pero ahora le avisamos. Le advertimos que no destruya las piedras de protección.
¿Quién?
El líder Eirwig. Eirwig. Él...
¡Maldición! Los túneles que dijo el granjero son los de Domheim. Si los faunos llevan allí a los prisioneros es porque provienen de ahí. En cuanto al líder, ese bruto ignorante. Bueno, no hay forma de razonar con él. Ve a comprobarlo si quieres. Ya lo intenté. Una vez que hayas terminado, búscame en los túneles. Refuerzos o no, es hora de recuperar nuestras tierras.
¿Qué? Solo quiero lo mejor para mi pueblo. Pero algunos todavía tienen nociones muy antiguas y no ven el futuro. La Catedral de la Luz es nuestro futuro. La hambruna pudo haber sido enviada para probarnos, pero persistiremos. Seré fuerte para todos. La fe y la oración nos sacarán de esta oscuridad.
Todavía no. Todavía no. Necesito tiempo para preparar eso.
Debo decir que no me sorprende. Espero que puedas con esto. Si los faunos eran fuertes fuera de la ciudad, serán más fuertes aquí. Pero algo me dice que ahí dentro están las respuestas. ¡Vamos!
¡Oye tú! ¡Por favor! ¡Ayúdanos a salir de aquí! Vinimos aquí para desterrar este mal. Pero ahora no puedo dejar a mis amigos aquí. No así. No. Podemos hacerlo sin ayuda.
¡Están aquí! ¡Prepárate!
La única forma de salir de esto es luchando.
Necesito tiempo para preparar eso.
¡Puede que sobrevivamos!
Todavía no.
¡No! ¡Perdimos a alguien! Toma, por tomarte la molestia. No lo habría logrado sin tu ayuda.
Todavía no. Todavía no.
¡Te bendigo!
Traje 3 más. Estoy más cerca. Ganarme su favor. Me odia, pero no lo entiende. Forma de proteger mi hogar.
No lo habría logrado sin tu ayuda.
Mira esto. Piedras de protección destruidas. Y ese símbolo de la Catedral de la Luz encastrado en su lugar. ¡Qué estúpido!
Te bendigo.
There's the leaves, man. Oh, here we come.
Y aquí, ya veo por qué están invadiendo nuestras tierras. Sigamos.
Todavía no. Necesito tiempo para preparar eso. Mis bolsas están llenas.
Puedes llevarte lo que quedó. Fue un buen desguace. Se desarmó sin problemas. Si algo se rompe, la forja está caliente.
Necesito tiempo para preparar eso. Todavía no.
Ahora que los túneles y los granjeros están libres, podemos empezar a reconstruir. El líder entrará en razón cuando vea los resultados. Gracias.
Necesito tiempo para preparar eso. Necesito tiempo para preparar eso. Necesito tiempo para preparar eso. Necesito tiempo para preparar eso.
Tus malditas piedras de protección no sirvieron de mucho, druida.
Te lo dije. Hay que colocarlas todas para que surtan efecto.
No tengo tiempo para esto. Tengo que cuidar mi granja y limpiar.
Funcionarán, Philan. Debes confiar en mí.
Esos malditos faunos atacaron otra vez. ¿Qué te parece? Disculpa mis modales. No debí haberte tratado así. Este fue el 5º ataque en esta luna. No sé cuántos más aguantaremos. Ese druida de allá trajo algunas piedras de protección. Se supone que ahuyentan a esos asquerosos faunos. Si buscas algo de trabajo honesto, podrías darme una mano con eso. Por supuesto que te pagaré, pero ten cuidado. Seguro que hay más de esos bichos por ahí.
No te preocupes, lo investigaré. Todavía no. Todavía no. Todavía no. Necesito tiempo para preparar eso. Todavía no. Todavía no.
Veremos qué tal funciona la magia de Ater. Por mi parte, prefiero una disuasión más directa que hasta los faunos entiendan. Ah, las malditas bestias se sentaron en los pozos del extremo sur de las colinas. Su líder es un bruto, feo y enorme llamado Blackhorn. Montar la cabeza de ese bastardo en un poste les enseñaría qué le sucede a quienes atacan las colinas.
Necesito tiempo para preparar eso. Todavía no. Todavía no.
¡Cuidado! ¡Por aquí! ¡Ayuda! ¡Ayúdame! ¡Por favor! ¡Ayuda! ¡Por favor!
¡Ayúdame! ¡Por favor!
¡Ayuda! ¡Por favor!
salvaste la vida.
Todavía no. Necesito tiempo para preparar eso. Todavía no. Todavía no. No puedo cargar más. No puedo cargar más.
Que el Padre te bendiga. ¿Necesitas algo?
Getting access to your mount or unlocking horses is probably one of the most important things you want to do first in Diablo 4, as it makes exploration of your entire map so much easier. Quickly get to world boss events, as these are pretty rare, so in this video I'm going to share how to do it, and also free cosmetics you can unlock during your adventures. So without further ado, let's get right to it. Alright, so what you're gonna have to do first is complete a series of missions, campaign quests if you will, the entire Act 1, Act 2 and Act 3, which is gonna take you a little bit of time, but I can tell you it is worth it, as from then it's gonna be so much easier to get access to new waypoints, altars of Lilith, and also explore all the different dungeons on the map. Alright, so once you've completed Act 1, 2 and 3, you will get a quest for Act 4 to visit the Cathedral of Light in Kyovashat. You will now also have access to Mount Donan's Favor, a priority quest inside Kyovashat, for which you're going to have to speak with the Stable Master. He will give you a brief introduction to how mounts work exactly, which is pretty straightforward, but what I think is pretty nice is that if you talk to him, you can also customize your horse. During my adventures, I came across multiple cosmetics, free ones which you can pick up from the floor. Very important, you want to keep your eyes open for these, as they don't have a shiny color like legendaries. Instead, they look like grey trash, so be sure to not leave trash behind, ladies and gentlemen. You will regret it. This item can be used to add a new cosmetic look for your mounts. It's account bound, cannot be salvaged, so you won't be able to trade it with friends. So if we quickly have a look at the Stable Master, you can see that we have different mount skins, but also mount armor. The first one, which I have equipped almost all the time, is the Brigandine Barding. While I'm quite certain, I also found the Traveling Merchant's tag skin during my adventures. So definitely keep your eyes open for trash on the floor, ladies and gentlemen, because it might very well be a skin for your horse. Alright, so there you have it, everything you need to know about your mount in Diablo 4. If you found this video helpful, be sure to leave a like, help out the channel, and yeah, feel free to join the community Discord as well as our clan of Diablo 4, which can be found right there as well. Right now though, I want to wish you a lot of fun with the game. Good luck with leveling. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Hi guys, Desmo here, and today I want to talk about the order in which you should complete different activities in Diablo 4. So a lot of people have been asking about side quests. I've seen a lot of people being confused whether you can do side quests while doing the campaign. When should you focus on renown? Should you do it in tier 1, in tier 2, in tier 3? And a lot of people have this confusion because you really can't know for sure until you complete the game, because you don't know exactly how much experience each of these things gives, so you don't know like what level you'll end up with. So from my experience completing all of those things, I'm gonna tell you how I played it and what worked out for me, and also what are the other options you have if you wanna maximize the efficiency that you're doing it, or maximize the efficiency of your time if you choose going for like a completionist approach. So there are different approaches that you can take, so I'm gonna talk about all of them and tell you basically how you wanna organize things and how you wanna structure the things that you're doing in order depending on how you wanna play. So first of all, let's focus at the beginning. So when you're making your first character, the number one thing you should focus on is the campaign. You should skip side quests unless you want to do a couple of side quests that are on the way. That's totally fine, but you're gonna be completely fine skipping the side quests at the beginning. The reason is the best time to do these side quests is actually later in World Tier 3, and there's a reason for that. But at the beginning, you basically want to focus on the main campaign, and that's what I did. I basically focused 90% on the main campaign. While you are doing the main campaign, the one thing that you want to do is, as soon as you unlock a region, like let's say you are good enough level to do content in that region, you want to look for dungeons that have aspects that are very important for your build. So for example, for my build, that would be the penetrating shot aspect, the trick shot aspect from the dungeon, and then I want to go as quickly as I can, get that so that my build is online, and then play with that for the rest of the campaign. It's gonna make your character feel better, it's gonna make things much easier, but the main focus, like 90% of the time, the first thing you should be doing is campaign straight up. In the second character and later characters after you have completed the campaign, there is no need to do it. So instead of that, you'll be simply going for the renown right away. But if you start with your first character, then campaign is the number one priority. After you finish the campaign, for me, I was doing it at World Tier 2. So I ended up around level 45. I've seen some people end up a little bit higher level.
Necesito tiempo para preparar eso.
Or if you were doing it at World Tier 1, you might be a little bit lower level. But after the campaign, before going to World Tier 3, I recommend doing all of the dungeons that have codexes that your build can use. The reason for that is dungeons are the best way to gear up in XP. So you want to do them in order to prepare for the capstone dungeon. And by doing them, you're going to get a bunch of rare gear that's going to be very useful to you. You're going to find some good rare gear for every slot, and then after filling in those slots, you're going to be able to also put legendary aspects on that, which is going to allow you to have a much more powerful character, which is going to tackle the capstone very, very easily. So that's what you want to do, and this is also going to bring you closer to level 50, and then you do your capstone dungeon. After doing the capstone dungeon, you can progress to World Tier 3, and I recommend doing that because you're gonna get more experience, you can get more gold, more loot and everything, so it's definitely worth it going to World Tier 3 quite early. And then in World Tier 3, you want to focus on the renown grind if you want to get all of the renown, which is kind of a personal choice because you might not necessarily want to do it, right? Maybe you just want to only do the 3 renown tiers just to get the skill points and you don't care about the paragon points and the obols. So in that case, if you want to like rush to the high level as fast as possible, such as the people who are racing, they wouldn't do like all of the renown grind for all of the paragon points. They would basically skip the last 2 tiers, just get the 2 skill points because that is much quicker to do, and then they would just go spam dungeons. So if you only care about give me XP, give me loot now, I don't care about anything else, I will not do any other stuff, like I just want XP loot right now, where I'm racing as high level as possible, you just do dungeons. From when you get to World Tier 3, just spam dungeons, some nightmare dungeons, and just do it over and over, and that's how you get the most efficient, like pure, quickest XP in golden items. However, if you are going to go for the renown, and especially if you are going to eventually want to have 100% completion in all of the regions, then you want to take a very different approach.
Necesito más tiempo.
So once I got to World Tier 3, my approach was that I want to get to 100% renown eventually, but I want to just get 2000 renown in every single region to get all of the bonuses for all of the paragon points, and then progress to World Tier 4. And the way that XP works out roughly is that when you're going to be done with getting 2000 renown in every single one of the regions, which gives you all of the bonuses, you're going to be about level 70 or very close to level 70, which is going to be perfect for doing the capstone dungeon to progress to World Tier 4. And that's the approach I took. So while doing that, I basically selected one region at a time. So let's say we start with Fractured Peaks or with Skosglen, whatever region you want. And then the first thing I do is I pick up all of the quests from the town, right? So I pick up just all of the quests on the way, and I only have quests from that region in my quest log to not make it confusing, so I'm doing one region at a time. When I pick up all of the quests that are on the way, I'm not gonna like specifically go town to town and pick up all of them, but just go to the main town, pick up all of the ones there, and then I'm gonna follow basically the map with Altars of Lilith. Altars of Lilith give you tons of renown, and also they give you a very like specific bonuses that are only acquirable through the Altars of Lilith, and they transfer to all of the other characters that you're going to do. So you definitely want to make sure that you get all of the Altars of Lilith on your first character, and that also will allow you to explore the map and explore the world, which is absolutely incredible. So if you're not racing, right, if you're not racing, you shouldn't be spamming dungeons. I think spamming dungeons is gonna get you burnt out, and it's gonna make it feel like the game is boring because you're just doing one thing over and over, and that's what a lot of people have been doing, and then they're going on Reddit and complaining that there's no content in the game. Meanwhile, they skipped all of the content in the game to get the loot and XP, which if you're playing the game the way I'm describing right now, you're gonna get those things anyway, right? So there's no point rushing to that where there's so much other content to do. So the way I would recommend doing it is you first grab the quest, then you follow the Altars of Lilith, And then as you are following the altars of Lilith, if there is a quest nearby, just do it. If there is a dungeon nearby that has the aspect that you like, or you just want to do the dungeon, just do it. Dungeons give a lot of good renown as well, but usually you want to do altars first, quest second, dungeons last. The reason why you want to do dungeons last is because if you're gonna go for like 100% renown and all of the objectives completed, you're gonna run nightmare dungeons in World Tier 3 and in World Tier 4 anyway, right? So the dungeons you're gonna finish at the end anyway because you're gonna run them. But I would recommend doing them if they, for example, overlap with the Tree of Whispers bounties. So one thing that I haven't mentioned yet is the Tree of Whispers. That's another thing that a lot of people are wondering, is it worth doing, when should you be doing it, and so on. So Tree of Whispers, in my opinion, is a waste of time early on unless it is efficient for you to do it. So what I mean by that, Tree of Whispers basically just gives you gear, right? It just gives you extra gear, extra resources, which you don't need early on, because your build should be strong enough as is, and you're going to be acquiring gear from just progressing your renown anyway, so it is completely unnecessary. However, if you have a dungeon that is marked and it gives you like 5 grim favors for the Tree of Whispers, or if you're doing a quest in an area where if you're killing the monsters there, you're automatically also getting favors for the Tree of Whispers, then do that, prioritize that. There's lots of times where there is like a dungeon marked by the Tree of Whispers, and you can just do it, get the renown and get the Tree of Whispers bonus at the same time. That's when you want to do that. Another thing other than Tree of Whispers is Hell Tides. When Hell Tides happen, this is another opportunity to go into that region and just do some quests on the way, maybe do also Tree of Whispers stuff that is like in the same place. You can literally have three things at the same time. You can have a Hell Tide going on, you can have Tree of Whispers bounties, and you can have quests and exploration that you can do in the exact same region, right? So that's what I would do. Also, if you're doing the renown, one of the first things that you want to do is also the strongholds. So strongholds provide you with 100 renown, so they are absolutely worth doing. They're one of the first things that you want to be doing, and as you're going to be following the path of the altars of Lilith, you are going to encounter strongholds, because virtually every stronghold has an altar of Lilith in it, so it's naturally going to lead you that way. And when you do the stronghold, sometimes it's going to also unlock a waypoint, which is even more renown, and then it's going to unlock some extra quests and dungeons, which you can do for extra renown. So basically, after following the path of the altars, you're gonna be done with a bunch of quests. Maybe you'll do like half of the quests of the region. Maybe you'll do a few dungeons, maybe like 1/3 of dungeons in the region, and you're gonna discover basically most of the map, almost like all of it. You're gonna discover like 80 to 90% of the map and all of the waypoints. And that's gonna get you almost to the finish renown. And then basically you either do some extra quests or the dungeon. The benefit of doing quests first is that if you're ever going to be doing the side quests, doing them earlier will lead you through certain like chains and certain quest lines, which end up in a dungeon anyway. And then you're more efficient because you don't have to do the dungeon twice, and you simply pick up the quest first, and then once you do the dungeon, then you do the dungeon and you get the renown for the quest and for the dungeon at the same time. So that's how
Necesito tiempo para preparar eso.
And once you finish with all of the renown and you have all of the regions at 2000, you're going to be most likely high enough level to go to World Tier 4, and then you go to World Tier 4. One thing that I would be on the lookout is world bosses, because world bosses, in my opinion, are one of the more fun aspects of the game. So I would look out for the world bosses. They have bounties, they have like weekly cash bonuses, so you definitely want to get that. And then one tip I can give you as well with the Tree of Whispers: if you have a world boss spawn and you have a completed Tree of Whispers favor, right? You have
In this Diablo 4 video, we're going to be taking a look at what you should do after you complete the main campaign. What is there to do after that? What you should prioritize? What you should focus on in order to get the most out of your time spent so that you can complete everything that you want to do. So the first thing you're going to do after you finish the main campaign is try and get to level 50 if you're not there already. If you finish the campaign and you're well over level 50, this is not going to be a problem for you. But the dungeon you need to do, called the Cathedral of Light, the capstone dungeon that's in the northern part of Govashat, is enemies in that dungeon are about 50 or so. They're like 52, 53, something like that. You're going to struggle in that dungeon if you are not around level 50. So go get your level up to that if it's not. If it's already there, that's fine. If it's higher, that's fine. Once you've done that, you want to go into that dungeon. That's going to allow you to go to Tier 3, where most of the endgame activities are available to you. Now, once there are really 3 activities for you to do. There are Tree of Whispers quests, there are Hell Tides that appear periodically, and there are Nightmare Dungeons that you're going to farm. The Tree of Whispers basically gives you random objectives around certain zones of the game.
Necesito tiempo para eso.
And what these are kind of like bounties: kill a monster, kill a bunch of monsters, run a dungeon, etc. And if you get enough points, each one of these activities is worth a certain amount of points. You're going to take it back to the Tree of Whispers and redeem it for a cache of goods. Sometimes this is like 2-handed weapons, or it might be a chest piece, and sometimes you get like a higher roll cache that has even better gear, so you want to make sure you get that when you can. But you can do this to get gear, and this is an easy way to get some good gear if you are struggling with your gear when you first get to World Tier 3. And you'll need to do this at least one time in order to get a Nightmare Sigil, which will allow you to enter a Nightmare Dungeon. And Nightmare Dungeons are essentially special versions of regular dungeons that you have to consume a sigil to create, and these are in your consumables tab of your inventory. And these take a specific dungeon and convert it into a tier of a Nightmare Dungeon. You start at Nightmare Tier 1, and you're going to go through this dungeon with some sort of buff, but also negative effects. Maybe like enemies explode when they die, maybe something falls to the ground and drops lightning
para preparar eso.
There are a slew of different negative and positive effects of game while running these dungeons that will make them more challenging. And there are a couple reasons why you want to do Nightmare Dungeons. First is the fact that these dungeons are regularly filled with large groups of elites, like 4, 5, 6 elite groups at a time of these monsters, the ones that are always dropping rares for you typically out in the landscape, or sometimes you ran into 2 or 3 of them, or 1 or 2 of them in regular dungeons. They're here in abundance, and that increases your chances of getting legendaries for killing these enemies, because the more you kill, the more chance you have. It's just a numbers game, so it's a very good source of legendary items. Additionally, completing one of these dungeons will allow you to assign experience points to one of your Paragon glyphs, allowing you to make it stronger and stronger, and I'll talk a little bit about what that is. So as you pass 50 and you progress in the Paragon system, you're going to put points on your Paragon board, gaining extra stats, and periodically you'll come to sockets on these boards that allow you to slot glyphs that have different effects, and these glyphs are just loot drops that you'll randomly get from doing different activities in the game, like doing Tree of Whispers or doing Nightmare Dungeon.
Necesito tiempo para preparar eso.
Slot it into that board, and the effect on it can get stronger and stronger the more you level it up. And you can assign it to whichever glyph you want, even if it's not the one you're using. Maybe you plan to try some other glyph and you want to level it up, that's fine. You can do whatever you want to do there. But the higher level you go in the Nightmare tiers, the more experience you gain for those glyphs. So obviously the enemies are going to get higher level, they're going to be harder, they're going to take you, a better build to get through, but you'll get more experience to level up those glyphs, making it faster to reach higher and higher levels of them. So your objective here should be to farm legendaries. You should be farming sacred legendaries. If you didn't know, World Tier 3 has a new version of equipment called Sacred. And this is essentially better versions of everything that you've seen before. So if you get a sacred rare, or a sacred magic item, or a sacred legendary, it's basically just a slightly better version of what you were getting before. So your objective should be, besides improving these glyphs and getting experience for them, making them stronger, should be leveling up and also replacing all of your current legendaries with sacred versions of the ones you want for your build, because they'll be slightly better. You can also upgrade these types of equipment one more time than you can regular legendaries. Normally you can upgrade legendaries 4 times, like the blacksmith or the jeweler, but you can upgrade sacred 5 times, and this allows you to really get some more out of their bonuses. And next we come to Hell Tides, which are kind of a random event that happens in one particular zone of the map, usually that lasts for like 90 minutes or a few hours or something like that. And you're going to go into these zones, and there's going to be like some enemies and meteors coming down. There's also rare crafting materials that you can only find during Hell Tides there, which you'll want to, so you should definitely spend some time doing Hell Tides. And what you're going to do in these Hell Tides is kill enemies, and you're going to gain a resource that then allows you to open chests that have like pretty much a guaranteed sacred legendary drop. It's not 100% because I've opened some before that didn't have one, but it's like 80 to 90% likely that you're going to get a sacred legendary. And these chests have varying amounts on them based on what they are. Like a piece of armor is cheaper, for example, than a two-handed weapon is, or a piece of jewelry is. So you're going to have to decide based on what you can see on your map and the time you have remaining what you want to get out of these chests. And you're going to start farming enemies, killing them, killing bosses, doing events inside them in order to gain as much of this resource
No
as
puedo
you can and
cargar
spend them
más.
to get legendaries. Keep in mind, though, that you got to be very careful when you're in this area. There are extremely powerful bosses that are much higher level than you. The first time I was there, I ran into a level 72 boss, and I was level 50, and I did like no damage, and I had to run away. So you can get killed very easily, and you want to avoid dying at all costs with health ties because you lose half of your currently accumulated resource when you die there. So if like you have like 150 of this item, and you're about ready to go to your chest and you die, well, now you have 75. So it's always a good idea to spend this resource as you get enough for what you want. That way you guarantee yourself that legendary, rather than trying to save up as much as you can and then go on a spending spree. And the next thing you're going to notice is world bosses. These appear after you finish the campaign, and you're going to be able to do these with groups of other players, whether you're in a group with them or just around them, doesn't really matter what. But you'll see like a marker on your map with like a world boss countdown timer when they appear, and it's usually 30 minutes, and you need to go to that location and be there when it starts, or join in the middle if you're lucky, and help take that down. And you get like a weekly chest for doing one world boss that has a bunch of legendary items in it and some crafting materials, and then you'll also get a guaranteed legendary drop from the world boss. So you definitely want to do those every time you see them if you're on. It's a great way to get guaranteed legendaries. It's fun to play with other players a little bit, and they're not too difficult in my experience. I think we have not failed one yet, so it's almost guaranteed loot. And then lastly, you're going to want to go around doing side quests, making sure that you've conquered all the strongholds and discovering all the altars of Lilith and stuff. If you didn't do all that when you went through the game, which you probably didn't, and this is going to give you reputation with the different factions of the game, and you're going to want to make sure you have at least rank 3 of this in order to have all the skills and potions that you need. This will help you with your Nightmare Dungeons. But you're going to want to continue on past this at some point, because as you reach the last rank in these reputations and these different regions, you're going to gain 4 Paragon points per region. That is a lot of Paragon points when you add it together. That is 20 Paragon points. That is not a small amount of Paragon points. And Paragon system is what's going to make your character a lot stronger as you get to the higher 70, 80 levels of the game. And once you reach level 70 or so and you feel confident, you can go do the Fallen Temple Capstone Dungeon in the Dry Steppes. And once completing this, it will allow you to change to the World Tier Difficulty 4, allowing you to do the Torment difficulty of the game, which has more difficult enemies. It gives you more experience, obviously, so you can level up faster. And there are new items called Ancestral items, which are basically like a more powerful version of Sacred, like Sacred was to the regular version. And there are also new uniques to find on this difficulty that you cannot find on World Tier 3. So that's a general idea of what things you want to do when you get to endgame. I highly recommend doing some Tree of Whispers or Whispers of the Dead quests until you feel confident with good enough gear. Or, doing a couple of them and then going into a Nightmare Dungeon, trying it, seeing where you're at. If you're struggling a little bit, doing more Whispers of the Dead stuff. And if you're doing okay, then continue on doing Nightmare Dungeons to get better and better gear. And maybe mixing it up every now and then with a Helltide or doing some questing to get some more reputation with certain factions again to get those skill points and get those Paragon points eventually as well. And one thing that I want to mention is on the higher difficulties of the game, don't neglect your resistances and defense. A lot of the early game is spent on getting the best offensive aspects, making your character really crank out the DPS, because killing enemies faster is a good strategy, and that's true of endgame as well. But enemies here hit harder. They hit much, much harder, so don't neglect your resistances. Don't neglect your armor. Make sure that you have some good defensive aspects on your gear when you go into these dungeons, or you will have a hard time at some point. It might not be the first couple dungeons you go into, but you will hit a wall, and it's usually because you've neglected the defensive part of your build. So make sure you have good defensive skills, good resistances and armor, and make sure you have some good legendary aspects that'll get you out of a bad situation. So that wraps up our endgame guide, kind of giving you ideas of what you should focus on when you get there. And obviously, once you complete the main campaign, if you have any other alt characters or you want to create a new class, a different class of character, you can skip the campaign and start going right into the Whispers of the Dead activities on your new character. You'll do this at a lower tier of the game because this activity is available at any tier. But you'll still be able to do that, which will allow you to gain experience and, have some other activities to do, not just doing dungeons and trying to collect your experience. So there is some, a little bit of a help there if you do decide to skip the main campaign on those characters. And to do that, you'll just go to the menu and click Skip Campaign on those characters, even if they already exist and you were already making progress with them when you finish the campaign.
Todavía no.
If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I hope you guys are enjoying Diablo 4 as much as I am. I can't wait to get out more content, so stay tuned for that.
It's
talk about how I honestly feel in Diablo 4. I've gotten to level 82. I have basically completed my renown at this point. I have got all the altars of Lilith.
Necesito tiempo para preparar eso.
4, my gear is looking pretty stout. I don't really know what less I could really farm at this point other than experience and do the pinnacle boss and, you know, like a few other things at the moment. I farmed God knows too many legendaries, done a bunch of PvP. You can see
Necesito tiempo para preparar eso.
And played with friends, also solo. So I've had a pretty good amount of experience, and this is coming from a druid perspective. I have seen a lot of feedback related to this game, both extremely positive as well as extremely negative, and I have yet to find too much of good nuanced conversation around the good and the bad around this game. I'm going to do my very best to divide that line fairly. So let's talk about the good first and what I like about the game. I think the game, people say, is overwhelmingly complicated, but I actually think it's fairly decently simple. I think the skill tree isn't too confusing. It looks very confusing at the beginning, but legitimately all of these are linear. So this isn't something where you really have to worry about matching things too much. I think the Paragon board looks very confusing until you actually try using it. And then you realize that, yes, it's still a little bit confusing, but it's not really as bad as it seems. If you can understand 90-degree angles and turning things, you can basically understand a Paragon board once you actually get your hands on it. Just looking at it, it looks very confusing. The way items work, the way legendaries work, the way uniques work, the way you acquire these, all seem decently well explained. So, and I will say there are some things, for instance, like aspects having different tiers, for instance, the ancestral and the sacred being different colors and literally named different. Think of aspects of the raging as an ancestral.
Todavía no.
This one is a sacred legendary, and having absolute, basically no difference in terms of what these items actually do, I think can also be extremely confusing as well. For instance, I have very often seen people say things like ancestral legendary aspects are better than normal. See how this one, it goes 1 to 5 seconds and is a maximum row of 5 seconds. But then this is a normal legendary ring that goes 1 to 5 seconds as well. It just says 3 there, and the reason people don't even realize it goes all the way to 5 seconds is because they have their tooltips off. So, and this is by default. So they have their advanced tooltips off by default. Shout out to Woody Joe actually for informing me about this because I didn't know this originally. And then they see it says 3 seconds here as well, and they think that one's lower than my aspect that's 5. So ancestral is higher. And so there's a lot of misinformation and confusion coming from a large amounts of players in the game, and that can get spread. So I do think there are some things that are fairly poorly explained in the game. However, once you understand the fundamentals of the mechanic, it becomes significantly more enjoyable. I do think there is something to be said for the world size. I feel like the actual size of the world, the fact that these Legion events, which, by the way, you can farm free horse cosmetics from here that's like a ghost horse, really cool. I think that the actual size of the map is significant when I'm teleporting around the different areas. I do feel variety in terms of what the landscape looks like. I do think it is fair to say that what a lot of people, the feedback I have read, is that people were surprised that so many of the minions look alike. This is true. It is a Diablo game. Hell is running over, and a lot of the demons are twins, apparently. So I do believe that there's something to be said for that. I don't know how you fix that within the ARPG hack and slash genre, to be fair, but I do understand that criticism, and I accept that. Now, in terms of the early, mid, and late game, I would like to get into that feedback as well. I think the early game is the most exciting. You're pushing through the story. What you're trying to do is fairly well explained. You're trying to do the yellow stories. They're very easily marked. There is good story dialogue. There is very good voice acting. This is Blizzard after all, so there's also very good cutscenes. Me personally, I found some of the boss fights to be way better than some of the other boss fights. I'll put it that way in order to keep the spoilers free. However, I have heard mixed reviews on the boss fights, so I will take that one under advisement as this is just my own personal opinion. I think it is not clear upon immediately playing the game what to do after the campaign, and I actually believe this is a good thing. I think the fact that it does not immediately tell you, go and farm nightmare dungeons, go and max your renown, but instead you get the sense of the world has opened up to you, I actually enjoy that a good deal. I am an old school RuneScape player. I've played RuneScape since 2001 when it came out from Devious Blood. I'm actually older than I look, to be honest with you guys. So for that reason, I very much enjoy open world. I do not like hand-holding. I like games that give me a character, and I feel like I am brutally trying to survive within the elements around me and figure out what's going on in the game. So I like that. The only thing I don't like is terrible, trashy UIs and bad quality.
Todavía
I would say the UIs could be improved. I'm not calling them trashy. I'm saying there's things I don't like. There's aspects that I don't like. I would say right now, having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 gym slots all swallowed up with gyms.
Necesito
Extremely
tiempo
annoying.
para
Having
preparar
no gym
eso.
bag is extremely annoying, and having inventory space. You guys saw already my. Let me walk over this way. You guys already saw my storage
Todavía
stash.
no.
And having a storage stash that is completely full with legendaries is very annoying. You might think, okay, this sounds like suffering some success. Oh, damn, you got so many legendaries. That's not what I'm saying. I cannot not pick these up if I want to. These are forced to be picked up to me. Unfortunately, here, these are forced for me to acquire. The reason is if a legendary drops in the field and I do not want that legendary and I leave the dungeon, when I go to my stash, that legendary shows up right here, and it gives me two options. I can either put it in my inventory or I can put it in the stash. Does not give me an auto salvage ability, does not give me anything like that. Also, the stash has no way for me to filter or search through, basically forcing me to go and hit the sort button in order to make them sort by type and then look through all the chest plates, etc. until I find one I want. So very often what I find myself doing is not wanting to look through 3,000 different items to find min-max rows from these tiny little texts and my eyes are blurring from playing the game 24 hours a day literally anyway. So instead I'm just crunching everything and not giving a fuck. So I think that that is probably some poor gameplay design in terms of the stash and the UI with these items. Now, that is going to be probably my primary negative feedback. There's one other point I would like to make, which is the dungeons. There are a lot of them. You are not required to clear all of them, but there are plenty of codexes here I have already done, as you can see, and there are plenty more still left to acquire. I do like the variety of having the legendary aspect at a minimum row. I think that's smart, so there's still a way and a reason to farm normal legendaries and not just use codex for everything, but this also makes certain builds more viable early and allows certain types of players to be able to build certain types of classes earlier than otherwise would have been possible with just pure RNG of getting the legendary items. This is almost like sort of being able to craft legendaries or set items from Diablo 3. This is a way of guaranteeing certain items. I think this was probably a necessity that these players encouraged because of the difficulty of the game. Now, speaking of the difficulty of the game, I've seen mixed opinions. I've seen people speaking that the gameplay is very slow, that the gameplay is very hard, that it's very brutal, and I enjoy that, is what people will say. Then I will see people that say this is way too easy. I'm blasting through everything. I got to in-game in 2 days, and I don't understand what I'm supposed to do now. So my addressing to these points is, really, I have multiple points to this, but I'm going to start with the most obvious, which is that players like me who are playing 24 hours a day in order to actually either make content creation on this or learn the entire game before the casual player in order to explain things to the casual player for the sake of media like YouTube views and Twitch growth, etc. We are not the standard players and should not be balanced around. The game should be balanced around the casual dad who comes home after a long day of work. He has kids that are yelling. He wants to sit down with his 1 beer a day and play for 2 hours. I think that that is the target audience because this is now Diablo. The majority of the people playing this are in 30 to 45 age bracket. They're old school gamers that enjoy the game very much, and they do not have 24 hours a day to play this game. So I do believe that while I agree it is possible for people like me to get to the point of now all I'm doing is essentially grinding the same thing over and over again very quickly, I do not believe that should be in the conversation in terms of overall complete balance. I think very often the casual average game player, because I know there's hardcore community in these games, I understand, I myself am one. Again, I play RuneScape, takes the most hours out of any game, the max, okay? This is true. I understand that there's audience for these things, but the vast majority of players are not the 1%, like maybe you, the viewer, who is a very good long-term PC hardcore gamer. That is a small percentage of the players, and the most players are probably never even going to hit level 82. I don't think the majority of players are going to farm all
Necesito
180
tiempo para
or
preparar
something
eso.
altars of Lilith that I farmed in order just to get the +2 strength on each type of one of these. I don't see that happening. Nor do I see the average player going into the Paragon board and spending 15 hours of their day while they drink their one beer to be able to figure this out. I do think what we will see is a vast majority of those casual players looking up a couple guides, a couple of tips and tricks. I myself have seen those search terms coming through. I know you guys are looking for them, figuring out the game on that level, and then playing through a pre-planned build. I think that's going to be a lot of players. However, in my personal mind, this would be a mistake. And the reason I say this is this game is actually, I think, very well suited for that casual type of player. I think the world tiers, seeing that there's only 4 of them, meaning every time you go from a world tier, it feels like a significant accomplishment. When you start in World Tier 1, and then you bump up to World Tier 2, and again, if you're min-maxing, you should start in World Tier 1, if it is going to be faster, and you will blast through it faster, so you can get to Tier 3 faster, and skip through its entirety. But if you are the average user, you will start in maybe 1, think this is too easy, or maybe you just don't want to blast things, so go to 2, and then each and every minion is going to feel like its own challenge, and that might actually be something that you enjoy personally. I also think that the discoverability of this game is insane. I think when you walk around the world and you discover these different dungeons, the different players that you'll see, the different events that will happen, you'll notice the codexes that will have rewards in them, even quests that are sort of hidden, like something I haven't even uncovered yet, and I've been playing the whole time. I think that is a fantastic addition to a Diablo game. I have played Diablo 3 significantly, and in my time playing Diablo 3, I felt like every single map was basically a linear path. It is me walking down a sidewalk to get somewhere, whereas in this, I actually do feel like I'm on a map. I'm on a landmass. I'm on a area, a state, whatever you want to call it. I'm in a world. Is what it actually feels like. That is a step up in terms of environment, which I think is heavily important for the average player. I think that's heavily important to feel like you're within an actual world. I think this is doubled down by the fact that when you're walking around on the map, you'll also very much experience unique type of monsters. So they'll have like a star that will show up and have a unique monster, and also the side quests, which are crucially important, by the way, for min-maxers for renown. You'll want to do these blue quests. Don't sleep on them. It's a mistake I made. I also believe that these side quests do a good job at getting you to areas that you don't normally go. Like, you tell me what's right here other than Altar of Lilith that's down there. There's nothing here. So in order to get you there, they got a side quest to get you there to experience that. I also think the fact that after you beat the campaign, you can make a new character, skip the campaign, and start in multiple different regions is actually a very great quality of life for people that play through the game, beat the campaign, and then just want to try a new class because they're not trying to go to level 100 and min-max one class. Level 100 takes a very long time. The experience leveling in this game is very different than some of the previous games, and so for that reason, I think this was also a good addition. I also want to mention that I'm seeing a lot of people get very angry about balance changes. I myself did sort of a half-hearted meme video on the Druid balance changes. I was kind of joking around, but at the most part, I thought Druid legitimately, I was surprised with the nerfs. Even people like me who are complaining about nerfs to classes for the in-game, my opinion, while it may matter, does not matter as much as balancing the game around the average user and what they experience. And I think that average user, the changes were probably for the best. I think trying to make sure that some classes are not so complete outliers, that
Necesito tiempo para
like,
preparar
don't
eso.
play this class, you're stupid. I hate it in games when I join a game and everyone's like, you're playing that class? What a loser. I hate that personally. I think I really enjoy being able to feel like I identify with my character, which this game does very well. When I'm playing Druid, I wanted to play Druid because I wanted to shapeshift. I wanted to be a bear, mostly. That was like 90% of my reason. I also wanted to be a wolf. That was the other 10%. I got what I wanted. It happens to be the class is actually quite good, and that both of those builds, by the way, Stormwolf actually seems like it has some. I have all of the uniques now for the Druid. I will do a video on this, but Stormwolf seems like it has something coming. I have some footage of this. So, in my own opinion, where I'm going with this, and you're probably seeing me mention quite often, this game is probably a 7 out of 10 For min-maxers, maybe a 6 out of 10. For people that want to grind through, blast 100 and all that, I find those people, the conversations we're having with those players, are getting bored quicker than they expected. However, for the average gamer, the 30 to 45-year-old dad who has a couple hours a day, I'm finding them enjoying the game even more than they expected. So there's a yin-yang balance. I think they sacrifice some of the focus on this hardcore community in order to engage a little bit more of the average old-school gamer who maybe doesn't have so much ability to be that hardcore gamer that they fell in love with gaming.
Todavía no.
I think this is a fine sacrifice. Because while you might think that focusing on the hardcore community that's just doubling down playing games all the time is their core fan base and they should appeal to these people, the reality is the core fan base is that dad who no longer has the ability, or that mom, okay, I'm not trying to do a gender thing, that doesn't have that ability
Todavía
anymore
no.
to play the games that they love and they desire because life happens. And I think Diablo 4 does actually a pretty good job at reestablishing this type of game into immediately being enjoyable for those types of players. So they might feel left behind in terms of levels, and don't feel left behind in terms of loving the game. That's what I have found personally from talking to players. It's what I have experienced with my own gameplay, and this stands true the reason for me. I did find the in-game come sooner than I imagined. However, I found myself getting the in-game to be more enjoyable than I thought. And I have since upgraded my rating from a 7 out of 10 for myself personally. This has nothing to do with the previous ratings I just mentioned. For myself, on the betas, I rated it a 7 out of 10. I thought that was very good. I since upgraded to an 8 out of 10. I will say I have one other harsh criticism.
Necesito tiempo para preparar eso.
With the items and the no search feature issues and the gem bag issues. There's one other thing, which is that dungeons are supposed to be fixed. They're not supposed to be kind of backtracking. I feel like putting in a line where you have to go this way, then back, then this way. When you take that line, you make it a circle where you have to go around. It's still the same distance, and that's effectively what happens. So I feel like I am still running the same amount of distance as I expected to with backtracking. I also find that the dungeons themselves do lack a little bit of variety, but they put a billion goddamn dungeons in this game. So they repeat some of the bosses. Those are really my only complaints. Other than that, I think this game, if you're the person who loved gaming growing up and has since lost the ability to play games 12 hours a day, like people like me that have no life other than video gaming, I think this game was designed for you. That's what I think. You know, I think there's a lot of conversation around the other side of the community, the hardcore, the niche, the small group. You know, I'm in that group, but I don't think it was designed for me. I think this game was designed for you. Will objectively, statistically increase your probability.
Necesito tiempo para preparar eso.
So you started playing Diablo, you probably saw somebody's build, you saw a bunch of legendary items that you want, and now you're frustrated because you've been playing for 10, 15, 20, 30 hours, and you still have yet to get the aspect you want. Maybe you haven't got the shockwave pulverized aspect you want. Maybe you haven't got a unique you want, etc. Let's talk about how exactly do we target farm specific legendary items. Now, to be brutally transparent, in the beginning of this video, there is no way in the game to guarantee that you get the exact aspect you want. But there is ways to increase the odds of getting the specific legendary aspect.
Mi carga es muy grande.
First, you need to understand how aspects actually work and that there's brackets associated with them. For instance, if you actually look at the way aspects work, there is allowed item type. You can also see this within the Codex of Power if you look as well. There's defensive, offensive,
Mis bolsas
resource,
están llenas.
utility, and mobility, and each of these types of aspects are only placeable on certain types of items. For instance, the offensive aspects here can only go on one-handed, two-handed gloves, amulets, and rings. This also applies to the way aspects work within items. So let's say I have a pair of boots. I can't put the offensive aspect on the pair of boots. You cannot imprint this aspect on this type of item. That is because this right here is one-handed, two-handed, etc. only, whereas the utility works for the helm, chest, armor, boots, gloves, and amulets. Now, this is crucially important. You're going to notice some of these double dip. The gloves
Se desarmó sin problemas.
are on both the utility list as well as our offensive
No mientras esté en el poblado.
And the rings are alone by themselves for resources. So how do we actually take this newly acquired information and translate it into acquiring the legendary aspect that you are trying to target farm? when you're in the wild, drops will stay within their brackets. So follow with me. If I drop a legendary ring item, I know that legendary ring item that's on the ground I'm about to pick up is either going to have an offensive aspect because rings are on the list. It will not have a utility aspect as there is no rings on the utility aspect list. And it might have a resource aspect on the list. So when I pick this ring up, if I'm looking for only the resource aspect, I might think this could be a really good opportunity for me to get the resource aspect I am looking for. Now, the same thing is true of things like legendary weapons, etc. When a two-handed drops and I look at it, I know, okay, well this two-handed weapon for instance, is going to have an offensive aspect on it because that is the only thing the two-handed weapon can have. It cannot have any other type of two-handed weapon. So you start to realize certain items can only have certain aspects for your class. It's crucially to understand that certain aspects are tied to certain items and that cannot be on other types of items, and it's also crucially important that some items double dip. For instance, when you see gloves that drop in the wild, the gloves that drop are going to have a very high chance of having all kinds of different aspects. It will be harder to actually acquire these because it can have offensive, it can have utility, and what have you. There's a lot of different options that can go on gloves. So we had to explain that concept before we got into how to use this knowledge to make sure you increase the percentage chance of using the aspect. Now let's get to that point. There are actually multiple ways to use this to your advantage. I'm going to start with the most obvious, easiest one and go to the more complicated one as we get going, okay, so you can understand the concept. Let's say that we want the pulverized shockwave aspect. Well, this pulverized aspect is an offensive aspect. It increases our damage, so we know because it's an offensive aspect, it can only show up on one-handed, two-handed, gloves, amulets, and rings. So if I was going to do, let's say, the gambler here, if I chose to be like, oh, it's an offensive, okay, I need a glove also, well, let me just buy some gloves right now until I get it. I'm actually having a lower percentage chance of getting the pulverized because other items or other aspects can show up on the gloves. So what I would actually want to do instead is target farm a one-handed weapon, as it is the cheapest gamble, and it's also not sharing any of the other aspects brackets. It cannot have a utility aspect. It cannot have a resource aspect. It can only have the offensive. So it is statistically a higher chance that when I buy one-handed maces, I will receive the pulverized one. For instance, here is an almost near perfect row of the actual Earth Scales one, which is another damage aspect, very important for my build. So for this reason, when you're gambling in things like the Trader, you want to make sure that you are targeting the item that is only within the aspect you are attempting to acquire. But this is not the only way that this applies. After you beat the campaign, you will unlock something called the Tree of Whispers. Tree of Whispers will tell you to do is go around the map and do these different little objectives. Like, for instance, do this dungeon, you'll get 5 of the Grim Favors. Once you have 10 Grim Favors, you back to it. When you turn in Grim Favors, there is actually an option for you to pick between 3 different caches, and those 3 different caches will be exactly like the gamble. It will tell you either amulet, ring, one-handed, etc. If you're trying to get an offensive aspect, pick that one. If you're trying to get a ring, the ring are the easiest to target farm because rings can they're the only one that can have the resource allocation. Okay, so if you're trying to get a resource generation one, that's obvious. If you're trying to get the offensive aspect, you're going to pick some kind of weapon, amulet, ring, etc. But preferably a weapon, as that's the easiest way to get an offensive aspect. Now, if you're going to farm the Tree of Whispers, something I highly recommend is looking for the dungeons that actually have these little chest icons like this to tell you for a reward for first completion. Rewards for first completion will give you the Codex of Power. So if there's a specific legendary you want, this is the only way you can guarantee it if it's in the Codex of Power. So let's just say the one I really wanted was the basic skill, the core skill. I can actually go here and be like, oh, this one's in the Codex of Power,
Necesito
and I can click on
tiempo
the ones
para preparar
that don't
eso.
have, for instance, critical strike. Click on it, and it will leave a pin on the map, and then I can actually see right where that dungeon is. Now, if you notice, there's the chest. Now, I would try to do this with the aspect I don't have yet, so that way it's a fresh dungeon, so not only will I get the renown from clearing the fresh dungeon, you want to clear the renown because you get Paragon points for it, but then also you'll get the aspect, and you'll also, if it has a mark, much like these red ones here, you'll also get the Grim Favors, so you'll be double dipping multiple ways to get legendary aspects. There's also hell-type farming. Hell-type farming will show up randomly on the map. You can teleport to it. What happens when you do hell-type farming is it will allow you to be able to specifically target farms, just like the Tree of Whispers and just like the oboes, target farm exact items. You can get cinders and then take those cinders and turn them into chests that are scattered throughout the Helltide map in order to get an item of the exact specification that is located on that chest. It was, for instance, it would say heavy armor, two-handed weapon, you know, what have you. I have all of these different labels so you know what kind of aspect you're getting yourself into. And just to double down and reiterate, it is crucially important that you check the aspects of the Codex of Power here and make sure that there is none of the aspects that you actually want are on the list. As you can see, there are
Todavía no.
You can just see my own class here. There's very many of the aspects, and a lot of these are crucial even to like the in-game build I am using that can be found straight up on the map. Just keep in mind that these aspects themselves have a minimum row for set aspects, whereas the ones that you find in the wild have the potential of having a much better row. For instance, you see this one goes 60 to 80% critical strike damage. If this was the Codex, this is 60% minimum. I found it in the wild, the row maximum, which is 80%, or the 30%, or 33.333%, or whatever you want to call it.
Todavía no.
Increases efficiency. So for that reason, farming in the overworld, farming in the Helltide, farming in the Tree of Whispers, farming the oboes, trying to get the legendary aspect you need that way, even though yes, it is going to be annoying and take you forever, and yes,
necesito tiempo para preparar eso.
Aspect you want in this game. That's something we're all struggling with. And yes, if you're having problems getting things like the pulverized aspect, for instance, if for Shockwave, it does seem like some of these legendary aspects seem to be more rare than others for whatever reason, so you're not alone. But this will objectively, statistically increase your probability of getting the legendary item that you want. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing to this channel, or coming by the live stream at twitch.tv/DarthMicrotransaction, where we are part of the official Diablo partner program and Twitch drops, and you can get yourself a horse code by gifting subscribe to the channel while I am live on Twitch, which we will be as of the posting of this video. With that being said, I very much appreciate all the support over the last week, and I'll see you on the next video.
Todavía no.
Buenas a todos, fantásticas criaturas increíbles. Aquí Riven, y esto es la culminación de muchísimas horas de trabajo, muchísimos días sin sueño. Durante los últimos días, durante las últimas semanas, hemos tenido acceso a Diablo 4 en su plenitud, el juego entero. En estos días he conseguido jugar más de 100 horas al juego para traeros en particular este review completo en profundidad del juego entero.
Diablo 4 won't be available until June 6th.
Todavía no.
On Xbox 360, PS4, and PC. However, for those who purchased the Deluxe or Ultimate Edition, Blizzard has been now in its entirety. Let's look at some differences here, which will also be available. Go Rogue, Sorcerer, or Necromancer. There are several great builds in the game.
It will kill a YouTube channel by sitting on live for like 12 hours a day. Are there no ads during the stream? There are ads before the stream. I don't manually run ads during the stream. I tend to put in minimum ads for the most part of my videos. I prefer views over, over monetizing. I think volume is better than, what's the word I'm looking for? I think volume of views is better than like monetizing on each and every one, if that makes sense. Got to know you from watching Asmongo's TV videos. Yeah. a lot of people know me from Asmin. More people recently have known me from Quinn. Of the two, I think I prefer the Quinn's reactions over Asmin. So I would say that both of them I have no problems with watching my content react to because they do the requirement.
Necesito tiempo para preparar eso. Necesito tiempo para preparar eso. Todavía no. Todavía no. Necesito tiempo para preparar eso. Todavía no. Todavía no. Todavía no. Todavía no. Necesito tiempo para preparar eso. Todavía no. Necesito tiempo para preparar eso. Necesito tiempo para preparar eso. Todavía no. Todavía no. Necesito tiempo para preparar eso. Necesito tiempo para preparar eso. Necesito tiempo para preparar eso. Necesito tiempo para preparar eso.